The quarterly failure meeting, as we like to call it, felt like a courtroom. Victor Hale stood at the head of the conference table, perfectly composed, silver hair, immaculate, voice calm and surgical. "This breakdown," he said, pausing for effect, "traces directly back to Alex. No warning, no prior discussion, no chance to defend myself." Every head in that room turned toward me, like a verdict had already been signed and delivered. I felt my face go hot, my chest tighten, but I kept my expression completely still. Because panic was exactly what Victor was shopping for. Exactly what would confirm whatever narrative he'd already prepared. I'd worked at Meridian Systems for 6 years, built processes, fixed problems, earned respect through reliability, not politics. And now Victor, my respected boss, the man everyone trusted, was publicly sacrificing me for something I hadn't done. The silence stretched unbearably. Someone coughed. Papers shuffled. No one met my eyes. As the meeting ended and people filed out quickly, avoiding me like failure was contagious, Victor walked past my chair. He leaned down just slightly, his voice a murmur only I could hear. "HR will be contacting you soon. Don't make this ugly, Alex." Then he smiled. Professional, polite, terrifying. And I understood. This wasn't a mistake, this was a plan, and I was the sacrifice he'd chosen. My inbox went eerily quiet after that meeting. Emails that should have included me suddenly didn't. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when I entered the break room. I watched a coworker literally close her laptop when I walked past her desk, like whatever she was working on was classified. Like I was contagious. At home that evening, I tried to process what had happened. My daughter Lila sat at the kitchen table, barely looking up from her phone. Her boyfriend Carter was on speaker, his laugh filling our small apartment, loud, confident, dismissive of the space I occupied. "Mom, can you not?" Lila said when I tried to ask about her day, like my voice was an interruption to something more important. I retreated to my room, feeling isolated in my own home the same way I'd felt isolated at work. My phone buzzed. Email notification. A calendar invite with a subject line that made my stomach drop. Corrective action review, mandatory attendance. No agenda attached. No notes about what would be discussed. No indication of what I was supposedly being corrected for. Just a trap disguised as a meeting invitation. I stared at that screen for a long time, feeling the walls closing in from every direction. Work. Home. Everywhere I turned, I was suddenly the problem. Suddenly in the way. Suddenly expendable. But something inside me refused to accept that narrative. Not yet. Not without understanding what was really happening. My name is Alex Morrison, and I'm a single mother. I've been raising Lila alone since her father left when she was 3. I've learned through years of struggling and surviving the critical difference between a genuine mistake and a calculated setup. Victor Hale doesn't shout. He doesn't throw things or make dramatic scenes. He edits people. Quietly, methodically. He removes them from the story until they simply disappear, and everyone accepts their absence as inevitable. I'd watched it happen to others. Watched colleagues fade from projects, then from meetings, then from the company entirely. But I'd always thought my work was solid enough to protect me. I'd been wrong. That evening, H sent a follow-up email to the calendar invite. It included an attachment labeled Performance Documentation Acknowledgement Required. I opened it with shaking hands. It was a failure report. Detailed. Professional. Devastating. It outlined specific decisions that had allegedly led to the quarterly breakdown. Decisions attributed to me. And at the bottom, in what appeared to be digital signature format, was my name. My acknowledged acceptance of responsibility. For something I'd never seen before. For decisions I'd never made. For a document I'd definitely never signed. I stared at that forged signature and felt something shift inside me. From shock to something colder. Something more focused. They'd made their first mistake. They'd created evidence, and evidence could be traced. The next morning, I emailed HR directly. Professional, calm. "I need to review the document history for the attached file. Can you provide the version timeline and edit log?" The response came back within an hour. Polite refusal wrapped in corporate language. "Unfortunately, that information is restricted to management-level review only." Restricted. Convenient. At home that afternoon, Lila was in her room with Carter. I heard them talking through the thin walls, heard my name mentioned, heard Carter's voice drop to something that sounded like concern but felt like poison. When Lila emerged for dinner, she looked at me with an expression I didn't recognize. Suspicion. Doubt. Carter says you're being paranoid about work, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. He says people who can't handle pressure sometimes imagine conspiracies. The words hit harder than Victor's public accusation. Because this meant Victor's story was already leaking beyond the office. Into my home. Into my relationship with my daughter. Through a boyfriend I'd never quite trusted but had tried to accept for Lila's sake. I wanted to defend myself, to explain, to make her understand. But the words died in my throat. Because how do you prove something didn't happen? How do you fight a narrative that's everywhere? Instead, I did what I should have done from the beginning. I checked the file metadata myself. And what I found made my hands go cold. The document had been edited 3 times after the timestamp of my supposed acknowledgement. Someone had created a story, then refined it, then planted my signature on something I'd never seen. I stopped defending myself and started watching, observing, documenting. I noticed who benefited from my potential fall. Victor suddenly had explanations for budget overruns, explanations that pointed to my poor decisions. He scheduled leadership sync meetings that I wasn't invited to, but he referenced my work in them like it was communal property. Like my analysis and recommendations had been team efforts he'd guided. I kept notes, dates, times, who was present, what was said. My calendar became a map of erasure. Then something unexpected happened. A coworker I barely knew, someone named Quinn from the data analytics team, slipped me a note during a bathroom break. Just a folded piece of paper pressed into my hand as we passed in the hallway. You're not the first. Meet me after work, North parking lot. I almost didn't go. It felt like a trap, like everything felt like a trap now. But curiosity and desperation pushed me to my car at 5:30, sitting with the engine off, waiting. Quinn appeared 10 minutes later, looking around nervously before sliding into my passenger seat. 3 people before you, Quinn said without preamble. All scapegoated right before major audits, all labeled unstable when they tried to fight back, all left quietly. The pattern had a name now. Victor wasn't improvising. He was following a script. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Quinn's expression was hard, angry, because one of those 3 people was my partner. And I watched what it did to her. I won't watch it happen again without doing something. Quinn showed me a list on a phone, protected by multiple passwords, 3 names before mine. I recognized one of them. A brilliant analyst who'd left suddenly 2 years ago. I'd heard whispers about a breakdown, about instability. But looking at the timeline Quinn showed me, I saw the truth. Each person had been scapegoated within weeks of financial audits. Each had been isolated, then eliminated. Each had left quietly with severance packages that probably included NDAs. Victor keeps a private archive, Quinn said quietly. Files on people, documentation of conversations, recordings, probably. If we can access it, we can prove the pattern. At home, Lila was different. Distant. She came in late and lied about where she'd been, her eyes sliding away from mine with practiced ease. Carter's influence was turning my daughter into someone I didn't recognize, someone who saw me as the enemy instead of the person trying to protect her. I wanted to shake her, to make her see. But I knew from experience that pushing Lila only made her pull away harder. So I focused on what I could control, the evidence, the pattern, the truth buried under Victor's careful lies. Quinn texted me late that night. Victor keeps his private files on a separate drive, not connected to the company network. We need physical access. I stared at that message and realized what we were actually talking about. Not just observation anymore. Action. Risk. The kind of move that could save me or destroy me completely. But doing nothing would definitely destroy me, so the choice was already made. The next morning, Victor called me into his office, alone. No HR, no witnesses. Just him behind his expensive desk looking at me with an expression that was almost paternal, almost kind. Alex, he said gently, I want to talk to you about what's happening, not as your supervisor but as someone who's concerned. He gestured to the chair across from him. I sat, keeping my face neutral even though every instinct screamed danger. Single parents face unique pressures, Victor continued, his voice soft and understanding. The stress of balancing work and family, the fear of not being enough. I understand that completely. The words were sympathetic. The subtext was a knife. He was building the narrative. Unstable single mother, can't handle pressure, struggling. I'm managing fine, I said evenly. Are you? He tilted his head slightly. Because the team is worried. Your decisions lately have been concerning, and I'd hate to see this situation define you. Then he slid a folder across the desk. Thick, official. I opened it carefully. Severance package. Generous. More money than I'd expected. Enough to tempt, enough to silence. You could take some time, Victor said. Focus on your daughter. Reset. No shame in that. But there was shame in it. Shame in accepting blame I didn't deserve. Shame in letting him win. I need to think about it, I said, closing the folder. His smile didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or calculation. Of course, but don't take too long. These offers have expiration dates. Lila found the severance paperwork in my bag that evening. I'd forgotten it was there, too distracted by everything else. She pulled it out while looking for money for pizza, and her face changed when she saw the company letterhead. So you're getting fired, she said. Not a question, a statement. Her eyes were bright with panic that she tried desperately to mask as anger. It's complicated, I started. It's not complicated, she interrupted. You're losing your job and you didn't even tell me. Carter's influence was in every word, his voice in her mouth, his perspective shaping how she saw me. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression shifted. Carter says if you can't handle work, we should move in with his family. They have space. The words hit like a slap. My daughter, planning to leave. Planning to choose a boyfriend's family over her own mother. Because I was failing. Because I couldn't handle life. Because Victor's narrative was winning. I'm not losing my job, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. I'm fighting something at work, something unfair, but I'm handling it. Lila looked at me with something that might have been hope or might have been pity. Mom, maybe you're making it bigger than it is. Maybe you just made mistakes and need to accept that. She walked away to her room, and I heard her voice through the door, talking to Carter, probably repeating our conversation, probably seeking his version of reality instead of mine. I sat alone in the kitchen and felt the isolation complete. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my work email on my laptop, checking for anything I'd missed. That's when I noticed something strange. A setting I didn't recognize in my email rules. I clicked through the preferences menu, digging deeper. And there it was. An auto-forwarding rule. Specific emails containing certain keywords were being automatically forwarded to an external address. Keywords like budget, timeline, risk assessment, everything I'd been working on, everything that might contain information Victor could use. It wasn't chaos, it was precision. Someone had deliberately set this up. Someone wanted my words in the wrong hands at exactly the right times. I checked the forwarding address carefully. It was masked, but the domain was visible. I searched it. The domain belonged to a consulting firm, a small boutique firm that specialized in corporate restructuring. And when I searched the firm's website, I found a familiar face, Graham Sutter. The consultant Victor frequently praised in meetings. The one he'd brought in 6 months ago to optimize our processes. The one who always seemed to have insider knowledge about team dynamics. Victor wasn't working alone. He had help. Professional help. Someone skilled at making corporate sacrifices look like natural consequences. I took screenshots of everything. Documented the forwarding rule. Traced the timeline of when it was created. 3 months ago. Right when Victor had started subtly distancing me from key projects. Right when the setup had begun. I had proof now. Not of the accusation itself, but of the mechanism. The how. And that was a start. At the next team huddle, Victor was in rare form, relaxed, confident, almost jovial. Halfway through the meeting while discussing quarterly targets, he made a joke. Well, we all make mistakes, he said with a light laugh. Some people just make more expensive ones than others. The room rippled with uncomfortable laughter. People glanced at me. Some looked away quickly. Some held my gaze just long enough to communicate pity. Victor's expression never changed, professional, warm. But his eyes found mine for just a moment, making sure I understood. I was the punchline, the cautionary tale, the expensive mistake. I didn't react, didn't defend, didn't show hurt or anger. I just took note of who laughed the hardest, who seemed most comfortable with my humiliation. Because those people were telling me something important. They were showing me where their loyalties lay. After the meeting, Quinn caught up with me in the hallway. Whispered without looking directly at me. "The consultant's coming in tomorrow. Graham, he'll slip up. They always do." That night I prepared. Not emotionally. Strategically. I reviewed everything I knew. Every timeline. Every inconsistency. Every piece of evidence Quinn and I had gathered. Victor thought he was playing chess, moving pieces, controlling the board, but he'd forgotten something crucial. The pieces can see the game too, and sometimes they refuse to be sacrificed. Graham Sutter arrived the next morning in an expensive suit and practiced smile. He shook my hand in the lobby like we were equals, his grip firm and professional. Then he spoke past me like I was already gone, like I was a ghost he was politely pretending to see. In the conference room, Graham referenced details that made my skin crawl, specific concerns about my decision-making, exact dates of alleged errors, information that could only have come from my private email threads, the ones being forwarded without my knowledge. He never named me directly, just used phrases like certain team members and documented patterns of concern. But everyone knew. The pointing was surgical even when indirect. I sat through the presentation with perfect composure, taking notes, asking no questions, showing nothing. After the meeting ended, I lingered, organizing my papers slowly, pretending to be absorbed in my laptop. That's when I saw it through the glass wall. Victor and Graham in the hallway. Graham pulling something from his briefcase, a small silver drive, transferring it to Victor's hand. Quick, decisive, practiced. They'd done this before. That drive probably contained everything. My forwarded emails, manufactured evidence, the narrative they'd built, physical proof of the conspiracy. I pulled out my phone under the desk and took a photo through the glass. Not perfect, but clear enough to show the exchange. Clear enough to prove connection. That evening, Quinn texted, "Did you see them?" I had, and now we both knew. This wasn't just corporate politics. This was organized, systematic, professional character assassination. And we were going to prove it. That night, Lila came to me crying. Not angry, not defensive, just broken. "Mom, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. "Carter asked me to do something a few weeks ago. He said it would help you, help us." My stomach dropped. "What did he do?" "He had me text Victor's assistant, from my phone, asking about your situation. He said it was just to check if you were okay. But I think..." She trailed off, the realization hitting her. "I think he was using me. My daughter, used as a pressure point, as a tool." "Carter's been asking about you constantly," she continued. "About your work, about your stress. He seemed so concerned, so supportive, but now I wonder." I held her while she cried, but inside I was calculating. Carter wasn't just a boyfriend, he was connected somehow. Had to be. That evening, Carter texted me directly. My phone lit up with his message while Lila was in the shower. "Maybe you should stop fighting people who are bigger than you, for Lila's sake." The threat was barely veiled, the connection undeniable. He knew too much, spoke too confidently, positioned himself too strategically in our lives. I responded with just 2 words, "Who's we?" He didn't reply, but I'd made my point. I knew he wasn't acting alone, knew he was part of something larger. And that knowledge shifted everything. Because it meant the conspiracy went beyond the office, into my home, into my family. They'd weaponized my daughter against me, and that was the mistake that would unravel everything. Monday morning brought a company-wide memo, subject line, "External Audit Announcement." The email explained that an independent auditing firm would be reviewing all major projects and expenditures from the past fiscal year. Standard procedure, routine compliance. But the timing made everything click into place. Victor needed a scapegoat before questions arrived, before external eyes examined the actual numbers, before the real story became visible. That's why the timeline felt so rehearsed, so urgent, so carefully orchestrated. He'd been preparing this sacrifice for months, knowing the audit was coming, knowing he needed someone to absorb the blame before truth had a chance to surface. The audit was scheduled for 2 weeks out, which meant Victor's window was closing, which meant he'd accelerate, push harder. That afternoon, HR called. Another meeting, this one labeled wellness check mandatory. I knew what that meant. They were building the instability narrative. documenting concerns, creating paper trail that would justify whatever they planned to do next. The meeting was scheduled for the following morning. I had less than 24 hours to prepare. That night, I didn't sleep. I organized every piece of evidence Quinn and I had gathered, every screenshot, every timeline, every inconsistency. I built a document, clean, professional, undeniable, not an emotional plea, just facts, dates, patterns, truth. If they wanted to paint me as unstable, I'd show them what stability looked like. Calm, prepared, unshakable. They'd made their next mistake. They'd given me one more meeting, one more chance to be in a room where the truth could be spoken. The wellness check meeting felt like an ambush disguised as concern. The HR representative, a man named Brian, sat across from me with a careful expression. Sympathetic but distant. Professional but predetermined. "We just want to make sure you're managing okay," he said. "The stress of recent events, the team concerns, we're here to support you." Translation: "We're here to document your breakdown. I appreciate the concern," I said calmly. "But I'm fine. I'd like to address the actual issues, though. Can we review the specific policies and procedures around performance documentation? Specifically, the signature authentication process." Brian blinked, clearly not the response he'd expected. That's a different conversation." "Is it?" I pulled out printed copies of company policy, highlighted sections. Because according to policy, any performance documentation requiring employee acknowledgement must be presented in person or with verified digital signature. I'd like to understand which process was followed in my case. Brian shifted uncomfortably, started to answer, stopped, started again, because calm was hard to label as unstable. Preparation was hard to dismiss as emotional. "I'll need to consult with management about those specifics," he said finally. "Of course," I replied evenly. "I'll wait for that clarification. In writing, please." The meeting ended awkwardly. I'd refused to play the role they'd written for me, refused to be emotional or defensive or weak. As I stood to leave, Brian said something that confirmed everything. "Victor has expressed additional concerns. He's requested restricted access to certain systems for you, effective immediately, for security purposes." Security purposes. They were locking me out, cutting my access, isolating me completely. "I understand," I said. "I'll need that in writing too, with specific justification documented." I walked out with my head high. But inside, I knew. The final move was coming, and I needed to be ready. By mid-afternoon, my system access was cut. Mid-task, mid-email, the screen just went dark and displayed an authentication error. My work vanished behind permissions like a door slammed politely shut. Colleagues who saw it happen looked away quickly, embarrassed for me, or complicit in it. I couldn't tell anymore. I packed my personal items quietly, photos of Lila, coffee mug, notepad, small things that marked the space as mine. As I worked, I felt the weight of isolation, professional exile. At home that evening, everything exploded. Lila came in with Carter, and they went straight to her room. I heard raised voices, heard my name. Then Lila stormed out, Carter behind her, both of them heading for the door. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Anywhere that's not here," Lila snapped. "You always choose work over me." "Always. Carter's family actually cares about us. Us." She'd said us. Like she and Carter were the unit. Like I was the outsider. "Lila, please," I started. "No," she interrupted. "I'm done, Mom. Done watching you fight battles you can't win. Done being embarrassed." They left. The door slammed. Silence filled the apartment like water filling lungs. My phone rang. Quinn. Voice tight and urgent. "Victor just scheduled an emergency board pre-brief for tomorrow morning. He's finalizing everything. Whatever he's planning, it's happening now." I looked around my empty apartment, my missing daughter, my crumbling career, everything Victor had systematically destroyed. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for him to finish writing my ending. I was going to write my own. The next morning, I received an unexpected email. Subject line: Private discussion, urgent. Sender: Marianne Klein, Senior Executive Vice President, someone I'd never directly worked with but had always respected from a distance. The email was brief. "Can we meet? Today. Off-site. I have questions." We met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. Marianne arrived precisely on time, dressed impeccably, expression unreadable. She didn't offer comfort or sympathy. She tested me. "Walk me through your timeline," she said without preamble. "Everything that's happened, factually. No interpretation. I did. Clean, methodical. Dates and events, email forwarding rules, document signatures I'd never provided, meetings I'd been excluded from. The pattern of isolation and blame. Marianne took notes, asked sharp questions, challenged inconsistencies. Not hostile, but thorough. After 30 minutes, she sat back and studied me carefully. Victor's story has holes, she said finally. But holes aren't proof. I need documentation, evidence. Something that shows pattern rather than perception. I have some of that, I said carefully. How much? Enough to show manipulation. Maybe not enough to prove conspiracy. Marianne's eyes sharpened. Something shifted in her expression. Interest, maybe respect. Get me everything you have, she said quietly. But do it carefully, quietly. If Victor knows I'm asking questions, he'll accelerate whatever he's planning. She paused. And Alex? Don't trust anyone at the office except Quinn. I know about your alliance. Quinn's partner was someone I respected. I know what happened to her wasn't random. I felt something loosen in my chest. An ally. Someone with power. Someone who believed. It wasn't safety. But it was possibility. Quinn and I spent the next day reconstructing everything. Version histories of documents, system access logs, email forwarding rules, meeting schedule changes. We built a timeline that showed pattern. Not accident, not mistakes, deliberate manipulation. The evidence formed a shape. Victor hadn't failed and panicked. Victor had failed and planned. He'd known the audit was coming, known his decisions would be questioned, so he'd built a scapegoat systematically, methodically, over months. That evening, Quinn found something that made us both stop cold. A file buried deep in the shared drive, password protected. The file name was innocuous, draftnarrative.mp3. What is that? I asked. Quinn tried several passwords, company standards, Victor's known preferences. Nothing worked. Then Quinn tried something different. A password hint appeared when you clicked the information icon. Just one word. Motherhood. My breath caught. Quinn looked at me. Try your daughter's name. I typed Lila's name. The file unlocked. Inside was an audio recording. Victor's voice, practicing, rehearsing. Alex's errors created the budget overrun. Alex's instability made proper oversight impossible. Alex's personal situation compromised her judgment. Over and over, different phrasings, different emphases, finding the version that sounded most believable. Then another voice joined. Graham, the consultant. We can pin it on her cleanly. Single mother, under stress, the narrative writes itself. I felt sick. Not because of the cruelty, because of the calculation. They'd used my life, my struggles, my daughter, as components in their story. This is it, Quinn whispered. This is everything. The next morning, Lila came home. She looked exhausted, scared. Mom, I need to tell you something about Carter. I waited. She sat down across from me, hands shaking. Carter's father works at your company. He's in finance, mid-level. I didn't know before, but Carter told me last night. He said his dad works close to Victor. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Carter hadn't been a random boyfriend. He'd been a corridor, a pipeline of information from my home to Victor's network. Carter used to ask me about you constantly. Lila continued, tears starting. About your stress, your work, your decisions. He seemed so caring, so interested. But last night, we fought about you, and he said something that made me realize. She looked up at me with devastated eyes. He said his father told him to keep tabs on you, to make sure you weren't causing problems. I held her while she broke apart, while she realized she'd been used, manipulated, turned into a weapon against her own mother. I took a photo, she whispered, of your documents. Carter asked me to, said it was just to understand what you were dealing with. I didn't think, I didn't know. It's okay, I said, even though it wasn't. Even though the betrayal cut deep. You didn't know. He manipulated you. We sat together in silence. Both of us victims of the same systematic attack. Both of us learning that trust could be weaponized. Later that evening, Lila showed me the texts, Carter's manipulation, his questions, his careful extraction of information, every word designed to help Victor's case. And I added them to our evidence file. The board review was scheduled for the following afternoon. Emergency session. Victor had called it himself, confident in his narrative. Confident that the board would accept his version, confirm his scapegoat, move forward with the sacrifice. I arrived early. The review room was all ice and glass. Corporate neutrality. I sat alone at one end of the long table, my folder of evidence in front of me. Quinn had helped me organize it perfectly. Timeline, access logs, audio files, everything. Victor arrived with Graham, both looking confident, professional, in control. The board members filtered in. Marianne entered last, her expression carefully neutral. Victor began his presentation smoothly. He explained the budget overrun, the project failures, the timeline of concerns. Then he presented my documents, my signature, my acknowledged errors, my pattern of poor judgment. "We've tried to support Alex through this," Victor said with practiced sympathy. "But the evidence is clear. The decisions that led to our quarterly problems can be traced directly to her role, her stress, her inability to manage competing priorities as a single parent." He turned to me with feigned compassion. "Alex, is there anything you'd like to admit? Anything you want to say about what happened?" The room waited, every eye on me, expecting breakdown, expecting emotional defense, expecting confirmation of the unstable narrative. I stood slowly, calmly. My hands didn't shake, my voice didn't waver. "Yes," I said clearly. "I'd like to clarify the timeline." I opened my folder and began presenting, not with emotion, not with accusations, just facts. This signature was allegedly provided on March 15th, but the document metadata shows it was created on March 20th, 5 days later. I displayed the screen capture, highlighted the timestamps. The email forwarding rule directing my communications to an external consultant was created without my knowledge on February 3rd. Here's the system log showing administrative-level access from Victor's account. Another document, another undeniable fact. The performance documentation includes decisions I never made. Here are the actual meeting notes showing who made those budget calls. Not me, Victor. I went through everything, piece by piece, building a case not through interpretation, but through evidence. The room grew quieter with each revelation. Board members leaned forward, took notes, exchanged glances. Victor's confidence began to crack, small at first, a tightening jaw, a shift in posture. Finally, I played the audio. Victor's voice filled the room. "We can pin it on her cleanly. Single mother, under stress." The narrative writes itself. Silence spread through the space like ink in water. Heavy, complete, undeniable. A board member, a woman named Patricia, spoke first. Her voice was controlled but hard. "Victor, why were you rehearsing a narrative about Alex's instability?" Victor tried charm, tried to laugh it off. "This is taken out of context. This was just thinking through communication strategies." "Communication strategies?" Marianne said coldly. "Or manufactured evidence?" The composure Victor had maintained for months finally cracked completely, and I watched it happen with calm satisfaction. Victor tried different tactics, each weaker than the last. First charm. "This is clearly a misunderstanding. Alex has been under tremendous stress." Then authority. "I'm the senior manager here. My judgment on team performance should be trusted." Then pity. "I've dedicated 15 years to this company. Are we really going to question my integrity over circumstantial evidence?" But each argument fell flat against the timeline, the documents, the audio recording, the systematic pattern Quinn and I had mapped. Marianne spoke with quiet authority. "Victor, the board will be conducting a full audit of your management practices, starting with every employee transition under your supervision for the past 3 years." Victor blinked. Too slow, too calculated. The mask was gone. That's not necessary." "That's not your decision," Marianne replied. She turned to one of the board members. "Security liaison, we'll need Victor's devices, all of them, right now." Victor's face went white. "You can't be serious." "We're very serious," Patricia said. "You've presented what appears to be forged documentation to justify terminating an employee. You've created systematic evidence of premeditated character assassination, and you've done it on company time using company resources." She stood. "You're suspended immediately pending investigation. Security will escort you out." I sat quietly through all of it, didn't gloat, didn't celebrate, just watched justice unfold with clinical precision. As security appeared to collect Victor's laptop and phone, he looked at me. Not with hatred, with something worse. Shock. He genuinely believed I would go quietly, believed the narrative he'd built was unshakable, believed single mothers were too overwhelmed to fight back. He'd been wrong. The office changed overnight. People who'd avoided my eyes for weeks suddenly couldn't avoid Victor's name. Conversations stopped when he was mentioned. Former allies distanced themselves publicly. HR found its spine suddenly, started asking questions they should have asked months earlier, started investigating patterns they should have noticed before. Graham, the consultant, stopped answering calls from the company. His firm issued a statement about ending their relationship with Meridian Systems effective immediately. Rats fleeing a sinking ship. At home, Lila blocked Carter's number, deleted his messages, cried like she was grieving someone who'd died. "I can't believe I didn't see it," she said. "Can't believe I trusted him over you. He was good at manipulation," I told her gently. "That's not your fault." But Carter wasn't done. 2 days after the board meeting, he showed up at our apartment door. Uninvited, unwelcome. I opened the door to find him standing there with that practiced smile, confident, unrepentant. "Your mom just ruined my family," he said, loud enough for Lila to hear from her room. "My dad's being questioned because of her lies. You know that, right?" I felt Lila appear behind me, felt her presence at my shoulder. "Leave," I said quietly. "Make me," Carter sneered. "You think you won something? You're still alone, still struggling, still a joke." Then Lila stepped beside me, her voice shook but stayed firm. "No, she's not. She's never been alone. She's had me, and I'm done letting people like you make me doubt that." We closed the door together, locked it, stood in the silence afterward. Two people who'd been systematically manipulated, who'd hurt each other while being used, who were choosing to rebuild. My phone rang later that evening. Marianne. Her voice was professional but warmer than before. "Victor submitted his resignation this afternoon. Effective immediately, no severance beyond contractual minimums. The investigation continues, but he won't be part of this company anymore." Relief washed through me. "Thank you for believing me." "Don't thank me," Marianne said. "Thank yourself for documenting everything, for staying calm, for building a case instead of just reacting emotionally." She paused. "The board wants to offer you something, a new role, Director of Process Integrity. You'd build systems to prevent this kind of manipulation from happening again. Transparent logs, shared accountability, no more private narratives." I felt tears prick my eyes. Not sadness, something else. Validation. "I need time to think about it," I said. "Of course. But Alex, you've earned this, not as compensation for what happened, because you've proven you understand systems. You understand how to build things that can't be weaponized." After we hung up, I sat with Lila, told her about the offer. She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in months. Pride. "You should take it, Mom." "We need to talk about us first," I said. "About rebuilding trust, about making sure we're okay." She nodded. "Can we do therapy? Together? I think we need help figuring out how to talk again." I agreed immediately, because healing wasn't instant, wasn't simple, required work and honesty and sometimes professional help. That night, Lila and I ordered pizza, watched a movie, laughed at stupid jokes, started the slow work of reconnecting, of remembering we were family, of choosing each other over the people who'd tried to divide us. The following weeks brought more revelations. The audit uncovered budget mismanagement that Victor had been hiding for over a year. Decisions he'd made, risks he'd taken, failures he'd been preparing to blame on someone else. Graham's consulting firm faced scrutiny. Other companies started asking questions about their methods, patterns emerging across multiple clients. The investigation expanded beyond our company, became industry news, a cautionary tale about corporate scapegoating. I started my new role quietly, built systems that required transparency, logs that couldn't be edited without leaving traces, documentation that needed multiple approvals, checks and balances Victor had systematically avoided. Quinn joined my team. Together we created processes that protected people, that made manipulation harder, that forced accountability at every level. Lila and I went to therapy weekly, learned to communicate, learned to recognize manipulation tactics, learned to trust each other again despite the damage that had been done. One evening, about 2 months after everything concluded, Lila asked me something important. "Mom, were you scared? During all of it?" "During all of it?" I thought about it carefully. "Terrified," I admitted. "Every day. But I learned something important. Fear doesn't have to stop you. Sometimes it just means what you're doing matters." She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner. I'm sorry I couldn't explain it better. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle." We sat together in comfortable silence, two survivors of the same systematic attack, healing at our own pace, building something stronger than what had been broken. 6 months later, I stood in a conference room presenting my new integrity framework to the board. Transparent systems, shared documentation, multiple approval processes, everything designed to make manipulation visible before it could succeed. The board approved unanimously. Marianne congratulated me afterward. "You've changed this company, Alex, not just by exposing Victor, but by building something better." Victor himself had disappeared from professional networks. LinkedIn deleted. Industry contacts severed. The Whisper network suggested he'd taken a job in a different state. Starting over somewhere, people didn't know his history. I didn't track him, didn't care where he landed. He was a problem I'd solved, a chapter I'd closed. What mattered was forward. Lila was thriving. Better grades, better friends, better judgment about who to trust. She'd learned hard lessons young. Painful lessons, but lessons that would protect her for life. At home one evening, she showed me a college essay she'd written about manipulation, about trust, about learning to recognize when someone's using your love against you. "It's good," I told her honestly, "really good. I learned from the best," she said. "You never gave up, even when everyone told you to." I thought about that, about the months of isolation, the professional exile, the manipulation of my own child against me, about standing in that boardroom with evidence instead of emotions, with facts instead of rage. "They needed a scapegoat," I said quietly. "They chose wrong, because I stopped begging people to believe me and started proving what was real." Lila smiled, hugged me, and in that moment I knew we'd survived, we'd healed, we'd won. Not through cruelty or revenge, but through calm persistence, through documentation and truth, through refusing to accept someone else's narrative about who we were. Victor had tried to edit me out of the story, but I'd rewritten the ending. And this version was mine.